Hey friends, it's Dwight. Welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while. I've been out of town and so I've been kind of busy and haven't been able to get in the studio to produce something fun and exciting. So today what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do something different. I'm going to do a resin pour. This is not pouring resin over an existing painting. I'm going to mix colors into the resin and do, I don't know, a dirty pour, flip cup. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do it yet because I got several steps to go through. I'm not doing this on canvas, I'm doing it on an 18 by 24 panel board, and I have to put some gesso down first. So I will walk you through the process and show you what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and mixing of my, I'm using like mica chips of color into my resin to create some color. So I'll show you every step of the way and we'll get started here in just a minute. Hey friends, it's Dwight. I'm back in the studio with my 18 by 24 panel board. Now, I know when we use canvases, we have to have it prepped. You can't paint on raw canvas because especially a water-based paint will seep through. So as well, when you're using panel board, wood board, you need to treat the surface as well, whether it's with gesso. Sometimes people use kills. I'm using a liquid gesso. I'm not using a paste, which is also common. I want a nice smooth surface. The reason I'm using liquid is that I want to just have a little bit of coverage on top of my panel board. Now, I've been watching videos from a lot of different artists and people just creating resined pieces on wood, and I've not seen them use gesso. What I have seen them do, and which I'll probably do once I get started on mine in just a few moments, is I will put a puddle of clear resin down and this sort of smear that around the canvas before I pour my color. The reason for that is that it helps the resin move a little bit easier and sort of spread out a little bit better. Now I am going to be using a self-leveling resin, so we shouldn't have that much of a problem. And knowing me, I'll probably have way too much resin on the canvas or on the panel board. So I'm just getting the sides coated a little bit just to make sure that we have every surface that the resin will be on covered. So I decided to add just a little bit more. And again, I'm just rolling that out. It's probably not the best way to use this gesso. I didn't have a brush to use, a bigger brush to use to smear it out. I will in just a moment use a smaller brush just to get some of it flat and even on the canvas. Or on the panel board, sorry. So I'm just making sure it's evenly covered. And I think it's looking pretty good. So like I mentioned a moment ago, I found a brush that I have. It's a nice soft brush, and I'm just going through and leveling everything out, if that's the right word to use. There were some, a little bit of bumps and lumps because I used the roller. So I was just making sure that I spread everything nice and thin before I get started. I'm not sure if that really matters with resin, but I've never done this before, so this is a learning experience for me as well. Okay, friends, so I'm almost done here. In the next segment, I'm going to show you, I'm going to tape my corners and edges, and I'll explain a little bit more why I do that. Okay guys, thanks for watching, and hold on, let this dry and we'll get started with the next segment. Okay friends, the gesso is all dry. It's just almost like a clear coat, so I'm hoping that it works just fine. So I'm using painter's tape to tape the edges because I want to keep the resin on the surface. Now what my plan is that when I'm done with my pouring and I've popped some bubbles and I let it sit for an hour or two, I will then take the tape off and let it slowly seep over the edge. Now, I saw a bunch of people do this on videos, and so I'm hoping that works. Another option is just to tilt paint off and let it drip down the side, but part of using the tape is that if you have a great composition, something that you like, it'll stay in place. And as it starts to harden, and get a little thicker, then what you have is, a nice composition that doesn't roll off the canvas board here. So with that in mind, this is what I'm doing. So on this canvas board, I need about, I think it was like 18 ounces of paint to cover. I'm sorry, that was 15 ounces of paint. I'm going to do, oh my God, I don't know, maybe close to 20 ounces, just because I want to make sure that the paint that goes off the corners and edges, there's enough paint to cover the entire panel board. Okay, this is an experiment, so we're going to have fun with it, and there we have it. I'm just checking to make sure that where the tape is, it's all up against the board just fine and tight, and so the resin doesn't slip down in between the paint and the board, which will make the tape more difficult to get off. Okay, friends, so next I'm going to mix my colors. I'm going to choose my colors, and we'll go from there. Okay, here we are. This is the mica powder that I'm using. It's from Rolio Pigments. Now, I'm not doing a product endorsement. They didn't contact me or anything. I just did some research and found what mica powders I can use in resin. And so this was the company that showed up, and I just decided to order some. So these are the colors I'm going to be using today. I've got gold, pearl white, Parisian green, blue, and burgundy. So I'm going to mix these in 4-ounce cups, and I might mix some together. I might make one big cup. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that yet, because the first part of this is definitely mixing the resin. And if you've not done resin before, it's equal parts of resin and I think I forgot what it's called, but it basically helps harden. I guess it's the hardener. It helps harden the resin on the canvas. Okay, so I'm going to get ready to mix that up, and we will mix these colors, and I'll show you that. Okay guys, here we are, and I am going to be using this brand. It's Art Resin. I've used it before. People have recommended it. This is the actual resin. So you do equal parts resin with equal parts hardener. So I'm going to mark that out on my pouring container here. A little bit more, a little extra, so that I can put some on the bottom of the panel board before I actually do the pour. So guys, I'm just gonna mix this up myself, and when I get ready to mix some of the mica powder in, I'll show you a demonstration of that. Okay guys, hold on. Okay, our goal here is to mix these colors up and mix them with the resin. So I'm gonna start with the gold. I just wanna make sure I reiterate that this is mica powder, so you need to wear a mask. You don't need to get that stuff into your lungs. So I poured about, 4 ounces in this cup, and mixed it in, stirred it in. It was very colorful and very shiny, which was really exciting. So I just went through each color and mixed them up. I'll just show you this. Again, a little too much in there, pour it back in. And this is the burgundy color. It's another beautiful color. You don't need a lot of the mica chips. I might have used a little too much. I don't know. There were no instructions in the box there, so I just used about a scoop worth. And what I'm doing is I go back and forth each time, and I want to make sure I keep stirring my resin, because Art Resin has about a 45-minute to an hour cure time. And after about 45 minutes, there's not much you can really do to it. There are other epoxies out there that are a lot more fluid, and I'll explain that to you in just a moment. And when I was using the tape around the edges, I was hoping that it was a little bit more fluid than it turns out to be, and I'll tell you about that in just a moment. So that was the white. It was almost like a pearl white. It wasn't as white as I was hoping, but it was still, again, a beautiful, beautiful color. And this is another nice one, this green. So I just keep mixing, again, mixing everything else up. And then finally, we will go ahead and do the blue. A little trouble getting the caps off. So pour in the resin. And then put some blue in. And again, mix it all up. And that's basically it. Okay, let's start the pour. Okay, here we are. Going to put some resin down, like I mentioned earlier. Going to smear it out. It just gives a little bit of a wet top coat. It's almost like when we do our pours, you know, we do a base coat. It allows the pour on top to move across the canvas a little bit easier. So this is sort of the idea behind this. So I wish I would have done my cups first, but I basically did a dirty cup pour. Started with the white, and then I put the gold. I did this cup on the left first. As you can see, the burgundy, some of the blue, and then the green on top of that, just sort of pouring it high. Then I started with the green on the bottom there, and I paired that again with the blue. And some, I think it's the rest of the gold. And the burgundy next to that. And then finished up the white in both cups. Okay, so I know if I had more resin, I think what would happen after I pour it, it would have spread a little bit better on the canvas. I was watching people do these pours, and this is sort of how they did it. So sort of diagonal, back and forth. And just emptying whatever I have left. Then I decided to tilt it. I realized it wasn't moving like I had hoped it was, but that's okay. I just wanted to move it around. Make sure it's all up against the tape. Now, I wasn't really going for a specific design. I was basically going for the process. I've not really done this way before. I've done resin on top of a painting. So I'm using my heat gun here. Now, a good trick that I saw, and it works really well, I can attest to that, is what you don't see, I believe, is after I pop these bubbles, I let it sit for a bit, but then I sprayed 91% rubbing alcohol on top. And if you watch closely at some point, you'll see some of the divots come into the resin. Now, the cool thing about that is that the alcohol evaporates. So it doesn't, see, you can see right there, I sprayed some. It doesn't leave a mark. It doesn't mess up the smoothness of the resin. I did this a couple of times, and I swear to you, it was a godsend that I saw somebody do that. So I'm going to do that regularly when I use resin, even if I do it over a pour that I do over on a canvas. So I'm just letting it sit. I'm watching it. I'm just making sure that if any more bubbles come up, I want to use the alcohol again. I don't want to use it a lot of times. I think I've used it 3 times total, and that was about it. I'm just watching, getting ready to just see how things work out here. So cleaning up my studio space a little bit. I think I might have mentioned that, having a black or white surface might have allowed those colors to pop a little bit more, but that's okay. That's okay. There you can see I sprayed some more alcohol, but it sort of disappears, which is a great thing. Okay, now we're going to take the tape off in just a moment. Okay, so what we want to do is remove this tape. Now, some of the videos that I watched and learned from, the resin came over the edges at this point, and they just sort of smeared it out a little bit, and that way it's not just cascading over and or ruining your composition. Now, art resin tends to set up a little bit more quickly than some of the other resin companies that I was watching. However, this still turned out just fine. So as you can see, a little bit was starting to come over the edges, and I just sat there and kind of watched it after I got the tape all taken off. And I just started, eventually rubbing my fingers along just to kind of make it look like it doesn't have any drips on it, to make sure that the resin at least covers the wood, even if there's no color on it. So walking around to the other side here, as you can see, just sort of rubbing my fingers on it. I did this actually a total of about 15-20 minutes just to make sure nothing was coming over the edges. You can sand things down as well once it's dry, especially if you have like drip marks that you want to get rid of. Some light grit sandpaper will help smooth that out. So as you can see in the reflection, I'm walking around, just checking all the edges and rubbing my fingers on there just to make sure they're covered. Again, just so that the painting is complete when it's done. I actually liked using the tape when I did my canvas paintings. I didn't tape off the edges. I just like that it sort of keeps everything in place, and once it sits for about 45 minutes to an hour, then it's a good time to take the paint off, and then you can, it slowly should move over the edges, and then you can slowly do what I'm doing right now, and that is just rub that in. If you have a lot of resin on the canvas or panel board, it will automatically self-level and it'll just start moving off the edges. But in this case, I had enough, but maybe I could have put more down. We'll see. So I'm just about finished here. Everything was looking good. Actually, I stayed on even longer after I did this video clip just to keep watching and to keep making sure that I have resin spread out all over the wood that is exposed. Okay, so in just a moment, we're going to do the reveal. And then after that, I will show you the actual dried results, which will be probably in a day or so, but of course in about a minute or two on this video. Okay, friends, so I finished with the painting, basically. It looks pretty good. There are no bubbles, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about why there are no bubbles. I don't know if you noticed, I don't think you saw it on frame, but I used 91% alcohol to spray. I saw this, and it gets those bubbles up. Like, there are no bubbles in this painting. Before the end of the last segment, I did just one more little squirt of the alcohol. And you have to remember, the alcohol will evaporate. So that's the key. So a couple of things I want to say is that I taped off the corners, which I'm glad I did. I thought more would flow over the edges. It didn't. I spent a few minutes just smearing around some of the epoxy to make sure that the edges and corners, sorry about the glare, are covered, you know, to give it that sort of finished look. The other thing I want to mention too, before I forget, is when I was mixing my mica paints, the chips and stuff, I wore a mask. You know, it's a lot of powder, so make sure you wear a mask when you do that. So I wore my mask as I mixed my paints up. Now, the other thing that I would probably do differently about this, I mean, for what it is, it's not bad. It's my first attempt, is that I would have painted the bottom or the top of the surface black first, or white, maybe even white, just to allow some of the richness of the color to come through. And I'm going to experiment with another board, and I'm going to do some different colors, but I'm going to paint the board first. So guys, I'm going to let this dry. I will show you the dried results, and thanks for watching. Okay guys, here I am. It is the next day and everything is dry, as you can tell. So I wanted to just kind of show you, if I'm going to hang it, part of my, sorry about the light overhead, and there's my reflection, is I was thinking sort of like this. Let me just lift this up. So what I wanted to show you is, it's hard to see, but see all that shine with, and the mica powder. It's kind of hard to tell because of how I'm holding my camera and the light, but what I've learned, there are a couple things that I've learned with the mica powder that I used, which is, I mentioned earlier, it's great. And I think if, like, say if this was a countertop, I think it would look really cool because, you know, it looks like it's, I mean, I know it's red, but it looks like it's, you know, you can use some marbling with brown, black, gray, gold, silver, you know, all that kind of fun stuff. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do another one, another panel this size, but I'm going to do a lot of white. I'm going to mix more this time, and I'm going to use like some gold and maybe some copper, but I'm going to also mix some of the mica powder in with the paints I'm going to use. Let me see here. So what I'm going to do is use this high flow acrylic paint set, and the colors I have for this, if I can get it open, that I'm going to use is gold. I have this beautiful copper, and I'm going to use some white. Now what I might have to do is add some regular acrylic paint to the mix. And I'm also going to do blue, a nice deep blue with a little bit of mica powder to make it really pop. Okay, so I'm talking about my next pour, not so much about this one. So guys, thanks for watching, and I hope some of the stuff I did makes some sense for you. And hold on, we're going to do another one another day or so. Okay, guys, take care. Have a great start to your week.